It is really, really positive. And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. It'll be one of the most important announcements that have been made. Mark, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Turns out Mark Carney doesn't have the international friends that he wants you and I to believe that he does after all. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. Well, things have gone from bad to worse for Mark Carney and Canada as a whole, actually, because we have a leader that the American government is still, again, doesn't have any respect for. And who can blame him? The Liberal Party ran up and down our airwaves, smacking down Donald Trump, running his name through the mud. You have Mark Carney talking about how he's going to take him on. He's a big tough toughie and he knows how to do it. And Trump sat right beside him and announced that there might be a big deal coming in the next couple of days, and then looked at Mark Carney and said, hey, you want to say anything? Then 2 days later, he announces how Mark Carney, the one guy he kept telling everybody was going to be the savior of Canada, Great Britain, and how he was going to give Great Britain our overpriced green steel. Turns out Great Britain has made a deal with the United States of America. The same deal that maybe is being negotiated in the background for Canada, but it doesn't matter, because our international markets are gone. And now you see why Donald Trump says, never say never.
Adding that we just concluded the rare earth deal with Ukraine. That's been fully ratified and approved by their legislative branches. And so we appreciate that. And I'll be speaking with the president in a little while, a little bit later. And we appreciate that. But the deal is all now signed up and ratified. And we have access to a massive amount of very, very high quality rare earth.
So Trump sits down to make an announcement. He's got the British ambassador with him, and he just casually mentions how he's finished ratifying a deal with the Ukrainians on all of their rare earth metals. The two people that were negotiating that deal signed it Monday, while Mark Carney was sitting beside Donald Trump. They signed it Monday, and here it is Thursday, and he's already ratified it. Now the Canadian press was going on about how, no, it might take weeks and a month. Nope. Took a couple of days. And do you know why it took a couple of days? Because they want the money that the Americans are offering them. They want the anti-drone equipment that the Americans have developed. They will give up those rare earth minerals. Everybody's going to get paid. Everybody's going to get jobs. They are going to build an economy not based on the green ideas of Mark Carney and the far left, but based on the reality of the world around them.
This morning, I'm thrilled to announce that we've reached a breakthrough trade deal with the United Kingdom, with one of our closest and most cherished allies. With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade. The deal includes billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture, dramatically increasing access for American beef, ethanol, and virtually all of the products produced by our great farmers. In addition, the UK will reduce or eliminate numerous non-tariff barriers that unfairly discriminated against American products, but this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries.
This is a significant thing for Canada. This is a very big deal. And on the surface, it looks terrible, and really it will cause a lot of problems. It may ultimately, if not handled correctly, will result in the destruction of the country. And before I get too far into that, I'll just say out loud that Mark Carney and the Liberal government are not the people to handle this problem. And I know many of you casted your vote thinking that Mark Carney was going to be the guy that was going to be able to handle Donald Trump. The problem that you had in your mind is that somehow Donald Trump cared about what you were thinking. That Donald Trump cared as much about what was going on as Canada as Canadians did about what's going on in America. I'm talking about how Mark Carney sat 3 feet away from the man who knew in a couple of days he was going to be hammering out a deal. He had the Prime Minister Stalmer on the phone during that announcement. And he just went, before he made this announcement, with Stalmer sitting on the phone, he talked about the deal that he hammered out with Ukraine. This impacts Canada. And the one person that we should be looking to solve the problem is the net zero flag bearer of the world, who believes that he was going to be able to take our overpriced products to new markets. Well, the Americans beat him to the punch. And why? Because everybody wants the American market. because the business model of America is the one that the whole wide world wants to be following.
And we'll also receive new market access for American chemicals, machinery, and many other industrial products that weren't allowed. A historic step. The deal includes plans that will bring the United Kingdom into the economic security alignment with the United States. That's the first of its kind. So we have a big economic security blanket. Both countries have agreed that the economic security is national security and will be working together as allies to ensure that we have a strong industrial base, appropriate export controls, and protections for key technologies and industries like steel. Steel is a big factor. Both countries will become stronger with steel and things necessary for military. You know, we used to build ships and other things literally at a level that nobody's ever seen, and we've eased up, and I would say that the UK certainly eased up, but now we're going to be uneasing both, and we work together.
Well, buy American food, buy American ethanol, which is, essentially gas, but it's made from corn. Buy American steel. Join with us and have an economic security blanket. Great Britain is like the 4th or the 6th largest economy on earth, and the Americans just locked it down, while Mark Carney is still sitting around twiddling his thumb saying, don't worry, the king is going to come and swear me in. Well, I guess you'd have to get the king to swear you in after this fiasco. Donald Trump sat a couple of feet away from you and didn't tell you a thing, but did mention out loud that it was coming, right? Oh, I have a big announcement coming. And you, I'm on the edge of my seat. Well, you actually should have been doing some work instead of thinking that you were going to put on theater for the Canadian population, because that theater is not going to sustain us when the cold and the dark of recession and even worse set in. Now, I know you're out there on the left thinking if you voted for the Liberal Party that you're looking for somebody to blame. The people that you need to blame were the media that led you astray. Now, we all know that the expression is revenge is a dish best served cold. And I believe right now that no matter what you want to tell yourself, Donald Trump is serving that dish cold to the Liberal Party. And they had no idea it was coming. Mark Carney stood at the pulpit and said 100 times he was going to take the steel of Canada to the UK. Well, it turns out that the UK, like I told you all, is okay with spending a little bit less money and okay with it not being the green steel that Mark Carney dreams of if it means that it will save their economy. Now, before we get into how the Liberal voters really need to reevaluate how they choose to cast their vote and how this is going to have a strong impact on the Canadian outcome, let's go over the fact sheet that the White House has released, or at least peruse it nonetheless. The fact sheet: US-UK reach historic trade deal. This trade deal will significantly expand U.S. market across the U.K., creating a $5 billion opportunity for new exports for U.S. farmers, ranchers, and producers, including $750 million in ethanol, $250 million in other products like beef. It commits the countries to work together to enhance industrial and agricultural market access. It closes loopholes to increase U.S. firms' competitiveness, streamlines customs procedures, establishes a high standard commitment in the area of intellectual property, labor, and environment, maximizes the competitiveness and security, and secures the supply chain of U.S. aerospace manufacturer through preferential access to high-quality UK aerospace components. I'll get to that in a second. It creates a secure supply chain for pharmaceutical products. Before I move further, one of the things that they did mention is that the car tariff is going to be 10%, but they are going to allow the British to bring in 100,000 vehicles. Those 100,000 vehicles are all going to be luxury vehicles, because Rolls-Royce is one of the companies that is on the, like they were talking about. So Rolls-Royce will be permitted to bring in the Rolls-Royce, and Jaguar and another car was mentioned specifically about how they will come in tariff-free, and anything over 100,000 units will, of course, then hit the tariff, start to get the tariff. Now, that's good for the British companies, because now they could say, well, it's rare in the United States, so we're adding $20,000 to the price tag. That's fine. But Rolls-Royce engines now are going to be purchasable by Boeing tariff-free, which then brings us back to the aerospace. So here we can see where the Canadians are getting left in the dust, because they're going to be selling engines out of Rolls-Royce into the United States that are going to be put into Boeing, which are then going to be turned around and sold onto the world market for commercial airliners or jet fighters, or all of the things that Canada could be doing but won't be doing, because Mark Carney believes we should leave it all in the ground and live like we did as cavemen. Let's get back to it. The reciprocal tariff rate of 10%, as originally announced, is still in effect. So they signed all this knowing that all of their products coming into the United States will still have a 10% tariff on them. The United States will agree to an alternate arrangement for Section 232 tariff on UK autos. Oh, here it is. Under the deal, the first 100,000 vehicles imported into the U.S. by UK car manufacturers each year is subject to a reciprocal rate of 10, and any additional vehicles are subject to 25. So the rolls will come in at a 10% tariff anyway. I got it a little incorrectly. And then over 100%, it'll be at 25. Or excuse me, over 100,000, it'll be at 25. The United States also recognizes the economic security measures taken by the UK to combat global steel excess capacity, will negotiate an alternative arrangement to the Section 232. The deal creates a new trading union for steel and aluminum. And Donald Trump just said 2 days ago, and right in the Oval Office, right to the camera, Mark Carney and the other ministers that he had with him, that we don't want Canadian steel, we don't want Canadian aluminum. Yet, the British government is going to be buying the American steel and the American aluminum. Are you paying attention to this out there, you guys? Because what's happening here is Donald Trump is kicking the crap out of Mark Carney. All right, so we've gone through a little bit of that. That's not the finalized deal, but it did cover the big parts. It covered the fact that you will be able to buy American food in British supermarkets. And one of the reporters asked about that, and he pointed to his new agriculture minister and how he's running around cleaning up all the beef, taking out all the steroids, taking out all the additives and all of that stuff, and now it's going to make American food acceptable on all of the markets around the world. So you can see from the overall scope of it what Donald Trump's ultimate goal is to turn America into China, but with capitalism instead of communism, so that everybody will have the freedom to make the product and the freedom to sell the product. Let's not forget that this impacts Mexico pretty badly too, because a lot of California growers, a lot of Texas growers can duplicate the food that's coming out of Mexico and send that actually to the British market, not to mention some of the other products that come out of Mexico. So that will cause Mexico also to come to the table. Now, Mark Carney's going to have to basically crawl on his hands and knees to Donald Trump. I don't care if they have some sort of a deal worked out. There's no way in the world that he has a deal worked out with Britain this way. He would have been talking about it 100 times. He would have been saying it out loud instead of just saying, oh no, we're going to look elsewhere to buy our jets, our fighter jets, and how somehow in his mind he thinks that he's going to get ahead of protecting the Arctic rather than have the Americans do it. Like the Americans right now have more things watching our northern border than the Canadians do. They don't want to say it out loud, but they absolutely do. And why? Because we have spent too long as a country not caring about ourselves as a country. And as a result, we are on the precipice of collapse. We are at the point of breaking apart. And I'm not trying to be exaggerate on this. I get that Quebec thinks that they all of a sudden want to be Canadian, but the rest of the country wants a job. The rest of the country wants a strong economy. And they don't care about your ideological drive. They never cared about it, but they do care about the fact that your ideology has taken this country's economy and put it in the garbage can. Everybody does, including the UK. The UK cared about it so much that they negotiated a deal with Donald Trump. Ukraine cared about it so much that they negotiated a deal with Donald Trump. China cares about it so much that they are coming hat in hand into Switzerland to meet with the Americans, trying to figure out how they can get around this. Of course, they won't be getting around it any more than Canada will, because the products that they offer to the Americans, Donald Trump doesn't want. Just like the products that we have in Canada, Donald Trump doesn't want. He doesn't want to have a free trade deal. He wants all of Canada, maybe so. He wants Greenland too, maybe so. But he doesn't need the minerals, or he would take the minerals coming out of the Canadian Shield, which is essentially Ontario, if he can get a decent deal. But instead of we ran around acting like a bunch of children going, oh, we're going to show you. Doug Ford just said 2 days ago on camera, I'll fix his little red wagon. Well, it seems, Doug Ford, that you need to do more than talk. You have told the province of Ontario that you needed to have a new mandate so that you could solve these problems. Then you immediately hid behind the coattails of Mark Carney. You sabotaged conservative motivations and conservative ideas. And I hate to break it to you all, but it's the conservative plan that's the only hope for Canada. It's the only hope. It's the conservative plan that was going to stimulate the economy. Mark Carney wants absolute control over everything. But absolute control over everything is what's gotten us into this mess in the first place. There is no European market for the Canadian stuff. There might be, for some of our maple products, I suppose, but they're not going to be lining up to buy our steel when they can buy the American steel at half the price, or better yet, when they can buy the American ore, right? They don't even need to get it brought over as raw steel. They can just get it brought over as ore and then be put into the now newly nationalized steel industry. The lesson that I'm trying to bring home is you sat around over your coffee listening to the corporate media try to convince you that Donald Trump is a bad person. Whether or not you like him or you don't like him, his policies are making the Americans stable. So what are you talking about? After that, does it really matter to you? Does it matter to them what you think? Do we really have to tell ourselves that we should have voted for a guy because we cared more about what was happening in America? And can we not see with our own two eyes now, all of you that were led astray by the corporate media, all of you that were led astray by the brainwashing of the far left, do we now understand that we have to stop acting like it's all about one gigantic emotion and start to think our way through this? Because where are we selling these products to now? And all of the companies, those jobs that you had, are you going to be getting a job are you going to be getting a passport and moving into the United States so that you can follow your company down there to get the job? Or do you imagine for 1 second that we're going to all of a sudden develop a green economy when the entire planet has abandoned it? Or do you believe that we're going to be able to plug these batteries in even though we don't have the infrastructure or the batteries? Mark Carney has a law on the market right now. The Liberal government has a law on the market where they won't be able to buy combustion engines next year. And within 10 years, he wants everybody on electric. 10 years. Where are you going to plug it in? Well, don't worry. It'll all be a 15-minute city. Is that what you're telling yourself? Donald Trump wiped this guy off the table. And you can say, well, how would Pierre Poilievre done it any better? The difference, of course, is that Mark Carney told you that he was going to do it. And Pierre Poilievre said that he was going to unlock the natural resources of this country and let everybody build, let everybody go crazy, move the regulation, all the things that you see Donald Trump doing. All of the things that you now see the UK Prime Minister doing, removing regulation and let's get down to business. Mark Carney's book, Values, talks about how it's all going to be some Marxist system. There's no competing. There's none. We had, for any of us that are old enough to remember, that we had the entire Marxist, communist model, economic model versus the free capital model for 40 years or 30 years in Europe. The Marxist model collapsed en masse. For all of you out there that are younger than that and are on the left side of the aisle or perhaps don't know what I'm talking about, simply put in the collapse of the USSR. And you will find that it starts in 1989 in East Germany. And how the Marxist model that had been essentially put in place since the end of the Second World War was nowhere near as strong as the free market enterprise of capitalism that has been put in place since the founding of the American country, which is the reason why it is so successful. It's got nothing to do with anything else. It has everything to do with the fact that the model that they follow allows everyone to do whatever they need to do to make money. And it's capitalist, and you can sit around and say, meow, 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 all you want. But that meow, meow, meow is about to really come home when you realize that the money that you use, that you rely on to take advantage of that capitalist system is now becoming worthless. And the products that you have access to is now becoming limited while you're running around looking at people over the fence, looking into the Americans as they drive cars that they've paid for, houses that they can afford, and food that is dirt cheap. All the while telling yourself that you voted for Mark Carney because you thought you were going to show Donald Trump something. This ideology that you hold on to on the far left, how well is that working for you now? Mark Carney believes that we could have one or two projects and somehow that's going to save the country. Pierre Poilievre said, let's just get everybody to work and we'll worry about the rest of it later. Now, would Donald Trump have also pulled this wool over the eyes of any leader of Canada? In all likelihood. The difference, of course, is that the Conservatives were ready to get down to business and start businesses up. Not wait around like Doug Ford is doing while Mark Carney gets humiliated day after day. All right, I'm supposed to remind everybody to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.